Hello, I'm Merilee Grindle. I would like to tell you about my new book. It's called Jobs for the Boys, Patronage and the State in Comparative Perspective, and it was published just this last summer, 2012, by Harvard University Press. Generally, patronage appointments to positions in the public sector are thought to bring with them corruption, incompetence. They're thought to be an indicator of an undemocratic system. Yet, for centuries, countries around the world worked on the basis of filling positions in the public service through patronage. And a number of countries, particularly in Latin America, continue to use patronage systems for recruitment to public service. So the question I ask in the book is that if patronage systems are thought to be so dysfunctional as they are thought to be by many, how is it that they have endured over centuries in many countries and that they still exist in some countries? How do we explain the fact that countries that used patronage to fill the public sector were not always plagued by corruption and incompetence and lack of democracy? This is the first question that I ask in my book. And what I do is go back historically through looking at case studies in Europe, the United States, and Japan to demonstrate that, in fact, patronage has been and continues to be, in some cases, a very useful and very flexible tool for political elites. It has been used in some cases to build national states, to centralize power. It has been used to as a way of promoting decentralization. It has been widely used as a mechanism for promoting significant policy changes. It's been used for bringing new generations and new ideas into government, as well as providing lots of examples of its use for corruption and incompetence. So the first question then is, why has patronage been so ubiquitous through the centuries? And I think I provide an interesting answer to that. But then I go on and say, despite the fact that patronage is a useful and flexible tool, it has in most countries of the developed world and many countries of the developing world been replaced by professional civil services of the Weberian kind. This happened in many countries in the 19th century and early 20th century. So a second question I ask is, how did this happen? How was it possible to replace these useful systems, or flexible systems, at least from the perspective of some political elites, with a very different kind of system? So that the book explores through the same sets of case studies the often lengthy process of reform and the conflicts that were engaged around trying to move from one system of recruitment to another. And then I go on and ask the question about what happens after a reform has been introduced. Once there's a new law, once there's a new system that has been introduced. And what I find is that, in fact, in many, many countries, and this is certainly true of the cases in Europe, the United States and Japan, there's an ongoing process of negotiation and contention around what kind of recruitment there will be to the public sector, with reformers promoting career civil services, but many politicians really finding ways, looking for ways to push such system back to something they're more comfortable with in terms of how the system worked in the good old days. And I use the same historical cases and move on to some contemporary cases in Latin America. what I conclude is that the problem of patronage systems in recruiting people to the public sector is not that they are inevitably corrupt and incompetent, but that such systems are capricious. That is, they respond very readily to the goals and uses of the political elites who manage them. They can't really be counted on over time to provide stable management of the state. So, from this perspective, I think it can be argued that the path of change in recruitment to public office has not, in fact, been one of movement from corruption to honesty or incompetence to competence, but really from flexibility to stability. And what we find now, in fact, is that systems put in place in the 19th century and the early 20th century are now being criticized for the excessive stability that they've introduced into the management of the state. And so this is what I look at, a very broad perspective on recruitment to public office, the costs and benefits, and methods of change from one to another. Thanks very much.